Hello, everybody. Welcome to Team Referral Network's monthly webinar series, our Brown Bag Lunch and Learn. I'm Kelly Holmes, CEO and founder of Team Referral Network, and I will be your host for today's featured event. Our Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar series is designed for busy entrepreneurs and business owners who want to invest in knowledge that can help them succeed. Today, our topic is knockout approaches to networking, and our expert is Michael Goldberg. And it's really my honor to be able to introduce him and tell you a little bit about him. Michael Goldberg, business owners and sales producers absolutely need a virtual flight plan to grow their business, especially now. Networking, scheduling appointments, developing relationships, generating referrals, making important connections, and being massively in service to prospects and clients are just as important as ever. Our guest for this session is Michael Goldberg, author, networking coach, speaker, boxer, and founder of Knockout Networking. Michael has helped thousands of sales producers, including financial advisors, brokers, insurance agents, and product wholesalers, generate hundreds of thousands of dollars through knockout networking and referral strategies. Michael has spoken at numerous conferences, including the $1 Million Roundtable. He is a two-time TEDx speaker and writes articles for numerous publications. When he's not speaking at conferences or corporate sales meetings, Michael is an award-winning adjunct professor at Rutgers University and donates time to speak at networking groups focused on job research. The discussion today will focus on ideas shared in Michael's new book, Knockout Networking for Financial Advisors, which is published by Wiley. Ladies and gentlemen, weighing in at 180 pounds, here is Michael Goldberg. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thanks. Ding, 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 ding.
That is awesome. I love your introduction. That is just tremendous. And you know, you've got to share just immediately a story about the boxing connection, okay?
Oh no, the story, the infamous boxing connection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all that long ago, which is probably a lifetime ago, before I was into this whole boxing thing, although I had been a fan for a long time, I remember swiping my card as I was walking into my gym. And I heard like a teet, 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 and I looked over and I see that there's a guy jumping rope. And I was fascinated by this guy. In fact, I probably stared at him way longer than I should have. And I was hypnotized by, I mean, he just, you know, he was a nice looking guy, polished. He just seemed like he was there. He was like meant to be there, but more so like his jumping rope was beautiful. I mean, he was on his toes. He was in his music. He was in his own world. The head was bobbing, and he was just, you know, tapping, and he was, you know, sweating a little bit, but he was just in this groove, in his own world. And, you know, I don't think that he could be bothered with anything else. He was just in some other place. I was admiring all of that stuff, and it really, it just looked, it looked quite beautiful. And I thought about that through my entire workout. Like, man, that, you know, that guy's just in a different place. So an hour and 45 minutes later, I'm leaving, and I noticed he was still there. He was still there going at it. I don't know if he had taken breaks or what happened, but I just thought, man, amazing. And I went through that whole process for 2 weeks of, you know, checking in, checking out. And it dawned on me that I need to learn how to do that, because I didn't really know how to jump rope, or at least not jump rope like that guy. It took me 2 weeks to get up enough nerve to go up to him, interrupt him, get him out of wherever he was, whatever trance he was in. And I ended up having this conversation with him. He didn't want to talk to me because he was into his own thing. And I totally get it, being a workout guy. And I said, listen, I'm so sorry to bother you, but you gotta give me a tip, a trick or something. Like, you just are so good at this. So he said, well, let's see you. And, you know, let's see how many you can do. He gave me his rope, and I was able to do it, but it was no big deal, you know. And he said, come back to me when you can do 20 in a row, and, you know, I'll give you something. And I think he just wanted to get rid of me, you know. So took his rope back, put his music back in, turned his back on me, and was back to the do-si-do. So now it's on, because now I can't sleep until I do this, right? So another week and a half go by when I bought a jump rope, you know, I watched videos, the whole thing. So after a week and a half, I go back to him, and I'm glad he didn't call me on being able to do 20. He gave me some tips and tricks and everything else, and he ended up connecting me to a guy that I'm going to call Jimmy because that's his name. Um, so Jimmy is a guy that trains boxers. So I ended up meeting Jimmy. And the guy that referred me, the guy in the gym, I'm friends with to this day, Dan, So I ended up hiring Jimmy to teach me how to jump rope. And I remember going down to Jimmy's basement, and it was like Fight Club. Like we walked out to this basement, and there's a ring, and there's like 15 guys training and jumping rope and boxing. You would never know this existed. Like, oh my gosh, I'm expecting Brad Pitt to come around. So I felt the guy was mocking me a little bit, like kind of like laughing at me rather than with me. And I said, Jimmy, I kind of feel like you're mocking me. He's like, you'll get the joke in a minute. So he gave me some pointers, and within 6 minutes, I was jumping rope. And that was the joke. Like, he couldn't believe I paid him to teach me how to do that. So he said, but you look like, that's not the end of it. He said, you look like you could hit something. So before long, I had wraps and gloves on. He was showing me the basics of boxing. And he said, hire me. I could teach you how to fight. You'll win in the ring, blah, 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 threw a sales pitch at me. And I did hire him. I said, you know what, hire me. I'd like to learn this, but I don't want to get hit in the face. About 6 weeks later, I was in the ring, and I was beating people up, and I was competing. And long story short, if I didn't approach Dan in the gym and interrupt this guy, a guy that did not want to be interrupted, and say, hi, my name is, not only wouldn't I have a friend named Dan, not only wouldn't I have a friend named Jimmy, not only wouldn't I have this skill called boxing, but, I wouldn't have this brand, I don't think, because this brand evolves out of that. Like, I was doing training, teaching, coaching, consulting, and networking, but not like this. And it turned into networking like boxing, or boxing like networking is about the connection. And what it did is it created a knockout effect to my business for sure. So I got friends out of it. I got a business model out of it. I got a brand out of it. And I think a pretty good story.
Wow, that is cool. I love that. It's funny, you and I've had multiple conversations, and this had not come up. So I'm super glad we saved it here today for our Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar. Okay.
Yeah. And, I'm fanatical about boxing now, too. I mean, not only do I continue to compete and train, but I keep up with all the big fights, and usually on my own webinars and my own speaking, that's usually what comes up with my attendees is like, before you get started, who's going to win, Pacquiao or Canelo? And so what a great opening, right?
That is great. That's great. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to us talking about the things that we're going to be touching on today. Let's go ahead and dive in. So, I love this picture, by the way.
Me too. I wish it was me.
Right. Oh, no, I've heard that you superimposed your body in there on Superman's face over there.
Rumor has it, yes.
Okay, so the best cure for fear is a plan, and boy, is that a true statement. But I love the reference to the Superman here with fear's kryptonite is a plan. So tell me, touch on what a plan means for people right now.
Well, what first struck me with this is, of course, everything that's going on right now, right? And we'd probably be meeting virtually anyway, but of course, life has become that. And I think people were really in a panic, especially right between March 13th and March 18th-ish. And I just know because a lot of things that I was being booked for stopped. And I think life stopped for a lot of people, at least in terms of business and everything else, right? So like right now, we've kind of gotten used to it for the most part, but people were just terrified. And so I was reaching out to my own clients and people, and even other business owners, and most of my clients are financial services organizations, and that's really a niche of mine. But of course, I do interface and collaborate with a lot of small business people through networking and everything else. And, and I needed to kind of get my own head straight, kind of wrapped around what was going on. But also, I really needed some good things to be able to, share with people. And that's really, everything I was reading, and this is kind of what I came up with, is that, you can be fearful, and fear is very paralyzing. And it really prevents you from moving forward. You start obsessing over the negative, and you don't really start to focus on the positive and what's possible. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of work that's coming out of what's happened right now that may not have happened had it not been. And a lot of, people are sharing that, right? So to me, it's kind of like the thing that will make fear maybe not go away, but certainly minimize it, is to come up with a plan. like, what is your plan? So it's your plan will make that fear go away, but it's got to be a plan living into the future. It's got to be a plan about, let's say, your finances or your money. So what are you going to do about the money, right? In terms of what's the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and probable scenario, and what is your plan going to be for all of that? I think that it's important to have a plan about your connections and really manage your connections. And what's your plan so what's your plan gonna be around that in terms of your relationships, right? Because if anything, that's gotta be maximized. And I think the final piece of that is a plan around how you are gonna be in absolute awesome, massive service to others, where you're going to be able to provide, provide value has become a cliche, right? But really to be able to provide help and be a resource and just check in with people, and I think that's kind of the phase that as business owners that we have to be in for the most part right now. And business will come from that, but it's not with an eye on business. It's really an eye on service. I think that's so important. And it comes back and it feels good, and that's what needs to happen. So I think having a plan in all three of these areas, makes a lot of fear or what we might be fearful of go away.
I think it's great too, and you're absolutely right, especially in the third bullet point there, that be massively in service to others. I've really had the opportunity over these last few weeks to connect even more so than I have with some of our team chapters, because obviously much easier to travel to or get to them when all I got to do is open up the laptop,
Yeah.
And I have heard over and over again in these meetings how wonderful it is for our team members to be in contact with each other. I've heard some of them say, the favorite part of their week is the fact that they get to tune into their team referral network meeting and connect with their fellow members and have that almost feeling of normalcy, okay, even though it is through Zoom, have that feeling of normalcy of being connected and generating referrals and doing coaching sessions, the things that we do in Team Referral Network.
Right.
So I totally see these knockout objectives as being something that can really help us overcome the fear and make the plan. Definitely. Good stuff, Michael.
Well, thank you.
So it probably does start with mindset, right?
Well, yeah, I think there's this whole having the right mindset, then having the right skill set. So mindset is kind of like your head is wrapped around or is in the right place. Skill set is, are you doing the right thing as a result of that? And then will set is, do you have a plan in place to make sure that all those things are happening? Right? It all starts with your mindset or your attitude. So so I've got a new book that just came out, Knockout Networking for Financial Advisors and Other Sales Producers. It just came out. It's actually out a week early. And I talk about this whole concept of mindset because it just kept coming up in my talks. And I realized that a lot of what I had to address with questions or buts was really around having an attendee or whomever's asking me that question have the right mindset, or at least understand what mindset is about, and giving them permission to have whatever mindset they're going to have or what the result might look like. So these are just some areas that came out of that that I like to talk about, is that having a networking mindset, and being that this is a networking organization, I'm kind of hoping that I'm like preaching to the choir here, right? Singing to the choir, but but like being open. So being open to people, being open to people connecting with you. That kind of an interesting story when I was even thinking of just that. I remember a number of months ago in Philadelphia, I was on my way to my own networking event that I lead. And I remember being in it was in an office building. We're on the top floor, and I'm at the elevator in the middle of the day. It's like 2 p.m. And there's a woman that's there that's waiting at the elevator with me. And I'm there with my 13-year-old daughter, who comes to some of my meetings with me, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. And I started a conversation with this woman at the elevator. And we kind of went back and forth a little bit. And she mentioned this meeting that she's going to. And I said, oh, really? I said, I'm going to the same place. What's your name? And she said, I'm not of the mindset to give my name to a strange man in front of an elevator. So I kind of chuckled and I said, okay. So, but I'm in a suit. I'm with my 13-year-old daughter. It's broad daylight. We're walking into an elevator. So we go into the same elevator. We go to the same place. She realized that I'm running the event. She was horrified, mortified. And once she kind of saw what was going on, she was very apologetic. And she was kind of shut down because she was just so, and I was over it. No worries, I get it, but to me, it was just like, you have to be open to a certain extent, right?
Yes.
Be it, time and place, appropriate, everything else. But to me, it's really being open to just being nice and having others be nice to you.
Along the subject of being open too, and I'm sure you've seen some of this, it's people making the adapting to the connecting online too. You have to be open for the new technology if it's new to you. People like you and I have been using this type of technology for years, but there's a lot of people who have not been exposed to this technology, and I have found some of them to be resistant. And I'm like, hey, no matter what happens here, this is here to stay. Like, there is a culture shift going on here, and you need to get on the bandwagon here. So I think being open to new technology would be good too. Don't you think so?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Being open, and also being open to realizing that there's still a lot that maybe we need to learn. So now the openness is, what's the opportunity now that I may have to learn some of these different things, and just owning that,
Right.
owning and accepting that, that's sort of part of the having a plan, right? Oh my gosh, I need to learn Zoom. Oh my gosh, I need to learn, whatever program you're using, more about LinkedIn or whatever it is. Now being open and looking at this as an opportunity and coming up with a plan to do so, right?
I need to learn how to use the referral button on Team Referral Network's website. That's been a fun one. So what do you mean by interested and interesting?
I don't know. No. So to really come from a place of just being interested in other people and interested in other things, because if you show and I don't mean like fake it. I mean, really just come from this place of, I really am interested in learning more, because those that are interested often are viewed as interesting. Like, tell me more about that. It creates more of a connection, right? If there's a show of disinterest, like that lady at the elevator, kind of disinterested in speaking with me until she realized kind of the context and all that, right? So just be and again, time and place, appropriate time and place. Be very self-aware of kind of where you're at, how you're coming across. Is it appropriate? Is it relevant? And then sort of regulate if you normally. So an example is that, I'm fairly outgoing, but I don't know if I'll necessarily work the room, as it were, if I was on the 7 train, the subway in New York City. Right. So I temper that a little bit, right? So know how I come across, or also realize that not everybody is necessarily as outgoing as I might be. So maybe regulate how I might normally be in an effort to make others feel more comfortable. In terms of my languaging, I always try to make sure that even no matter where I am, I'm not dropping profanity. I'm not really using slang, and making sure that my language is upbeat, professional, crisp, because I want people to potentially be attractive to the way that I'm speaking with them. If there's, in my energy, I'm very, very energetic, but I often try to mirror the energy of those people that are in my space or that I want to meet. But I don't want to overwhelm anybody either, right? So I want it to be sort of synonymous with how they come across. Perhaps I'll kick it up or down a notch depending on what feels appropriate. And then if there's an opportunity to help people, why not? And it could be as informal as opening a door for somebody. It could be, this is kind of a weird story, but a few months ago I was at my car dealer, and there was a woman there with her toddler son who needed to go into the bathroom. And we're both waiting for our vehicles, and I can see he wouldn't go into the bathroom without her, but she was not going to go into the men's room. So I walked over and I said, I know this is a little odd. And I introduced myself. I said, I'd be happy to walk into the bathroom with your son, and just make sure he's okay and all that stuff, if you're comfortable with that. And she thought that was very nice. And I got to know the boy and his name and everything else. And I walked in, walked out, walked back in, got him, walked back out, and it was all good, right? So again, it wasn't on paper or part of a script to do something like that, but I was trying to be open, trying to be helpful, trying to be of service, even though it could have been a little weird, but I tried to make it less weird.
It's interesting too, because I think today we sometimes, like the lady in the elevator, or, somebody needing help in a more delicate situation like this, it's about good manners. I was kind of taught this when I was, a little girl, that these are the things that you should be doing. And I think it might be kind of a lost art today. on maybe some of the younger generations, that this is normal. This is what really should be happening all over the place. And I almost see this being a change and again a cultural shift with what we have going on as well.
Yeah,
But
well, two thoughts. One, and kind of takeaways from this is, one is that if you're ever in a certain, not just you, but audience is in, and we're all networkers, right? But if you're ever in a situation where something like this feels uncomfortable, then don't do it. Right. So that's like the first thing. So it's really got to be according to your own comfort level, and that's fine. Because if it feels uncomfortable, it's just not your natural self, then don't be that. And then the second thing is really the purpose of the whole networking mindset is, and I think this is really kind of the glaring point, is that we are all these things, I would think most of us, when we walk into a room where we should be networking. Okay, we're at our event now, or we're at our Zoom room now, right? So our costumes are on, places everybody, right? So then it almost becomes obvious. To me, the real networking mindset is when you're not at the event, when it's informal, when you're in a hotel lobby, when you're traveling somewhere, when you're in a place where the networking switch is not on. To me, it's almost synonymous behavior. The thing that's difficult is that people are on a different wavelength. When you're at a networking event, everybody's got their networking hat on. When you're not at an event like that, they probably don't. I'm just suggesting maybe have that hat maybe halfway on your head at all times.
Yep, great. A way of life is how I've often described networking. We talk in similar language from Team Referral Network and Knockout Networking, but it really can become a skill that you master. And then if you make it a part of your everyday life, there's really a lot of success that can come from that. And of course, a lot of service that can come from that as well. So great stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what how you define networking.
Yeah, so my clinical definition of networking is learning, helping. I like a second helping, learning, helping. And a proactive approach, although it can be reactive, to meeting people, hopefully they're quality people, depending on the ponds that you fish in the hopes of learning from, and then over time, helping them. That's really what networking is. And again, this is not a new concept, but I really try to focus on the whole learning, helping as the 1-2 punch, because if you are really good, and again, it gets back to the whole mindset, is if you're coming from a place of always learning and contributing and being of service to people, right, they tend to do that right back, right? And you tend to, create what is called, or at least what I call, a we dynamic. Right, where it's this place of how can we network together? How can we help one another? How can we potentially refer each other? How can we work together? And really the caveat to be really good at this is to have a great communication strategy, which boils down to the questions that you ask, the way you describe yourself, how you follow up, follow through, stay in touch, and be that of service. And also having or developing a powerful network where you can demonstrate those behaviors.
Nice. I like that. I like that a lot. So I bet this 1/3 dynamic has a lot to do with that particular concept.
It does. Yeah, I get into math a lot, right?
Oh, I know.
Remember Andrew Yang? Remember when he was running, he had the math button on his lapel, So I'm big into math, and I'm big into, analysis. And in my experience, and you might have a different experience, but in my own experience, if I go to an event, now we're talking about not online, because I think the numbers might be different when we get into this whole virtual land. But if I'm kind of working in the room at a cocktail party, an association meeting, or a conference, and I'm not the speaker, and Kelly, you know this, when you're the speaker, it changes everything, right? But when I'm not the speaker, I'm just some guy in a room, I feel, and I'm a pretty good networker, I feel that if I meet, let's say 10 people, which is a lot of people to meet, I probably only truly connect with about 3 or 4 of them. That's about a third. And by truly connect, I mean like you had me at hello. Like it's like magic. It's like there's just so much to talk about and going back and forth with. Like it's just natural. It doesn't feel like net work. It feels like net fun or net play or net where have you been my whole life. That's to me the 1/3 dynamic, right? So the other 7 that perhaps not that that there's like hate going on there. That's not what I'm suggesting, but it's just not magic. It's just what is. I refer to that as the two-thirder dynamic. So in my mind, focus in terms of networking, referral marketing, potentially prospecting with the one-thirder, piece of pie, because that's easier. You already have the connection, so it's much easier to explore how you might help one another, how we can network together, right? It just makes it easy. So it's like those that we're chasing, those that we don't feel a great connection with, there's a reason for that. In fact, there's lots of reasons for that, and probably way too many to go over here, but it's just different agendas, different communication styles, different vibes, different approach, different philosophies, different mindsets. All of that's got a mathematical, algorithm to it as well. I don't want to have to figure that out or decode it. The reality is birds of a feather. So why work so hard to try to transform two-thirders to be what we think they ought to be? Simply just focus on the one-thirders. And the whole deal is that if somebody in my mind shows, and Kelly, you're a one-third to me, by the way, like you had me at hello, hopefully I'm a one-thirder to you too. That's usually the way it works, right? But it also works the opposite, that, that if I meet somebody and two-thirder, I'm probably not their fave either, right? And that's the whole thing, right? So focus on the one-thirders. I'll give you a quick example. This just happened a couple of hours ago. So I also lead networking groups as well. And so there was somebody that was referred to our group. We got a big meeting Thursday night, and it's somebody that I know, and it's somebody that in my mind is a two-thirder for a multitude of reasons. And she's a financial advisor, and I just have too many financial advisors here, and we have a whole metric around this, right? And I had to go back and say, no, she's not, no, this is, can't really, be a fit here. And the person that referred kind of pushed back, and I ended up on the phone. I had to get into this whole conversation as to why. And it was really because I just don't think she's a fit with the group because of just the way she comes across, and she's pushy and blah, blah, blah. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not a fit. And if I do that with an organization that I've created that I want to think is mostly one-thirders, and I dilute it with that, it's going to be a bad reflection on her, perhaps, bad reflection on me, and it's not going to be a good reflection in the group.
Right.
So that's the one-thirder, whatever that might mean to you.
Great. Good deal. So with that in mind, and working with our one-thirders, tell us these rules that we should be following here in order to be successful at this.
Yeah, these are a lot. I mean, I can go through every single one, and there's a lot of them, and they're in the book, and I've got 23 in the book. But these are, so the whole metaphor is, ever go to a public pool, at least in the US or Canada, there's always rules, like the pool rules,
right? Yeah.
Right. So, no swimming, no splashing, no fun,
running,
right?
Yes.
So I developed the rules many years ago when I was taking my little one to a public pool on a day I shouldn't have been working, but business owner was kind of working. I remember looking at these rules that had to be on the fence according to the Board of Health and OSHA. And I just thought, pretty much everybody in the US and Canada, wherever else they have rules, kind of understands what they are, but they still have to be there. I thought, how cool would it be if there were rules like that for networking events? And can you imagine if they had to be mandated by Board of Health and OSHA and the whole thing? Think of how much better, right? Everybody would be at networking. So I thought, what might that look like? And this is it, right? So part of this is, so share personal stories. So when I meet somebody for the first time, and I'm walking up, hi, my name is, not that I'll share every single personal story or really personal stories, right? But I'll say, very nice to meet you. Kelly, can I just share something with you? And it won't be with every person, but if something just happened and it is poignant and short and relevant, I'll share that story. What just happened to me downstairs at the elevator? And I might go into that story, right? I won't own this. I won't take over the stage though. I'm talking like a minute.
Right.
And I'll say, isn't that interesting? I said, has something like that ever happened to you, or have you ever had a similar experience? So just by having that happen, I'm going to almost always connect with that person. And if nothing else, at least almost always share some really fun stories. Right? And when I'm speaking, I try to start with my best stuff, right? When I meet people, I try to start with my best stuff too. And I want their best stuff. Stories just, so pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? I think stories are worth 1,000,000. So why not start with them?
Great.
Then I'll kind of get into professional stories, right? And kind of, transition into that. I often will try to share solutions, ideas, not products and services. And it may not be on the first glance, but that's usually how I come across is, I have an idea if you want to take this, or may I make a suggestion, not to come across like a know-it-all, but I want to come across as hopefully somebody that, has some smarts and people to say that's some great idea. And then I would ask questions of people as well and get their suggestions and ideas, right? So create that collaboration. Remember learning, helping, right? So share that. Ask questions, be interested.
Going back and being authentically interested too.
Yeah.
Asking those questions is really important.
Yeah. So that's where it gets into your asking questions, being interested. Talking about your niche or target market. I think that's so important because that's a big differentiator, especially with small business owners. I know small business owners that are web designers that will focus on any company. Then I know web designers that just focus on the pharmaceutical industry. You know who gets more referrals, at least from me? It's the one that's niche because I know how to refer them. And I know that they're specialists.
Isn't that true? And I'm just going to ask you to dive off here for just a second, because I know your niche is with the financial services arena, right. Insurance people. Go ahead and just share really quickly your story on how you ended up niching down to those markets.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think what story you're referring to. But I remember I was speaking at a networking meeting. It's not Team Referral Network, but it was another one that's similar many years ago. And I was asked to speak there in front of about 800 people. And I had never done a formal talk on networking. And I had to develop one. So I developed like 1 billion slides. And because I was terrified to be in front of all these people, it was like somebody asking you to talk about, for 45 minutes, I want you to share with this audience how you drink a glass of water. Go. That was kind of the way networking. Like, is it just something that you do? Winning. Try to create like all these slides. And so when I did this talk, I realized I didn't need the slides. Like I flipped like 2 of them and I was like on the moon delivering this talk. And which is how Knockout Networking was really born before it became Knockout Networking. So I did this talk and I realized this is really where I have to live. I was focused on delivering programs on leadership and other aspects of communication, but this was really where my heart and soul was. And after that talk, I realized, well, I've got about 700, almost 800 business owners in this room. That's really fun, but who really needs what I do, especially now? And it became evident that it was the financial services industry. And this was back in July of 2002, right? So a long time ago. I've been doing this a long time. And so I knew going into the next year that the financial services industry was going to be turned on its ear, because in October of 2003, the DNC, the Do Not Call ordinance, was being rolled out by the Federal Trade Commission. And I knew that if it was tough to be a financial advisor before that, imagine what it will be like after that. And I developed my entire PR campaign networking around that. And that's when my business absolutely exploded because of that. And financial services just became the place that I was most comfortable, because I just became most knowledgeable about it. And they really need what it is that I do. And I really love that marketplace. And at the end of it, it's really helping advisors help their clients, because I really believe in having a financial plan, having a financial planner, an advisor, having life insurance in place, and So being able to help advisors to be better at that is really helping on the broad brush.
I love your explanation and getting into this market, because I think a lot of times our small business owners that are part of Team Referral Network try, for fear of loss, they try to cover everything. And I have told them for a long time to really be very specific about what it is that they do. I'm going to ask you to run through the rest of the rules of networking. I don't want to run out of time on our other slides here. We've got one more rules of networking. So,
so as far as target market, to me, it's really going a mile deep rather than a mile wide. So it's not casting a wider net, right? It's really being very, very focused and intentional, because you're so much more referable. And it's not that being more general is wrong or bad. It's just way more difficult, right? So why make things so difficult, right? You want to become more referable and easier, to build your business. Listen more, talk less. I love to talk, but believe it or not, I love to listen more. When I'm networking and quote unquote working the room, I'm not the one that's talking the most. I'm often the one that's talking the least. And I'm not shy by any stretch. I just like to ask great questions and shut up so I can get great answers, learning, helping, right? So if I'm doing all the talking, I'm probably not doing as much learning.
Right.
The elevator speech. I hate the phrase, but I love the concept, and I'm happy to talk through it. It's one of my favorite concepts to share, and what certainly advisors and business owners find a lot of value in, because it is so implementable. If you want to, I've got a slide for that. If you want to flip it, I'm happy to talk through it.
Right. You want to just cover these other ones and then we'll go to the peace statement? Does that
I'm
sound
just looking
good?
at the clock. So be clear on how others help. Exchange contact info, utilizing LinkedIn. So especially now, right? So kind of LinkedIn is the way. So it's really being intentional about putting a message out there on LinkedIn and saying, I would love to connect. Perhaps there's ways that we can network and help one another. Again, practicing this whole we focus. Keep focus on the conversation, no multitasking. So and this is really more so when you're in a real room with people, but even when you're on webinars and people can see you, people know that you're multitasking. Try to not do that so much. Terminate conversations politely. Sometimes it's a little awkward or a little weird if the conversation just is kind of run its course. And just say, Kelly, it's been great chatting. If I could be of help later on today at this event, certainly call on me. Otherwise, good luck, and I look forward to seeing you again. Right? Or if there's an opportunity to introduce somebody because it benefits them, do that. Not because it benefits you necessarily, like not to get rid of somebody, right? But, so Bill, who you need to talk to? You need to talk to Carrie, and this is why, because Carrie's a CPA and and you're a financial advisor and and it makes sense because right? Take the initiative to follow up. So the fun stuff is face-to-face when you're actually speaking with people, which I refer to as the presentation phase, but really the magic comes from the follow-up, reconnect, and follow through. Having a plan, a goal, next steps, so once you do follow up, what does that look like? What are the next steps? Often there are no next steps. And I see that a lot in networking. Whereas, okay, we network, we connect, maybe we have like a one-to-one sort of meeting, and then it doesn't go anywhere. And in some cases, maybe it should. It's just we drop the ball or they drop the ball, or in some cases there's nothing there. But if there's something there, we often don't know how to take the next step, or we're on to the next thing.
Right. I have
a we thing, not a me thing, very, very collaborative. And then it's this whole concept of know, like, and trust. Whereas trust happens over time. When we meet people, we're often in the phase of know, like we're getting to know each other. Over time, we're getting to like each other, perhaps, at least a third of it. And then over time, we get to trust one another, and that's where referrals come from. That's where I contribute referrals to, and that's where a lot of the business or introductions start to happen. I think we make a big mistake by asking for that when we're in the wrong phase. Like when we're in just the getting to know phase, I'm not going to get introduced to somebody's best client probably.
Right, exactly. And on top of that, people are oftentimes are ready to get married before even dating. It's like, hey, come on, let's do the dating phase here and get to know each other before we can do it. For me, it's the mother test, and my mom's been gone for 10 years, 10 years now, but it's still the mother test. And so it takes a lot to get to that know and like them, and then ultimately trust them. When I refer this person to my mom, that's the ultimate test for me.
I like that. And then make it fun, right? It's got to be fun, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Otherwise, it's a chore.
Yeah, it can't be a chore. I mean, this has got to be fun, because if you look like you're having fun, hopefully you're going to attract the one-thirders that are also having fun as well. In fact, it's one of the criterias in my own group that I lead. Is one of the vetting things is, are they fun? Not that you have to be, Howie Mandel or something, right? Or you don't have to be Jerry Seinfeld, but are they fun to be around, right? Do they have fun at what they're doing? Do they look like they're having fun? That sort of thing.
Yep, exactly. Well, let's talk about the peace statement. You referenced this earlier. I know it's a pivotal part of your knockout networking. So tell us, what does the PEEC stand for?
Well, peace statement is my variation of the elevator speech. I don't like the phrase elevator speech or elevator pitch, because it suggests that I'm delivering a rehearsed speech, or that I'm sharing a pitch or making a pitch, right? And it really shouldn't be that at all. Really the connotation is I'm positioning myself to be able to share something important, and I want to be able to learn something important about you too. So in my mind, it's more of a positioning statement. And PEACE stands for your profession, expertise, environments, and call to action. Your profession, expertise, environments, call to action. So if somebody, let me take a step back. You're in a networking scenario, you're probably familiar with that, where maybe you're availed of a 30-second or 1-minute slice of time to give your intro or commercial. The PEACE statement is tailor-made for that, because in that context, you would share your profession, who you are, and perhaps how you serve. So I'm a speaker, trainer, consultant, boxer, founder of a firm called Knockout Networking. I'm focused on helping sales producers grow their business. So that would be my example of profession. Mm-hmm. Expertise is stuff you know. And I often would share it or recommend it being shared in threes. My expertise is in the areas of networking, referrals, and recruiting. Environment speaks to your target or niche market. Almost all of my work is in the insurance and financial services industry with companies like Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch. And call to action is typically your ask or what you might be looking for in the spirit of networking. So when I'm in meetings like this, I'm always looking to meet or be introduced to managing partners of companies like Any advice you might have as to how I might make a connection like that, I would love your perspective. Boom. And you'll get it.
Yep. Excellent. I love that. I love that. Okay. So tell us a little bit about Knockout Networking process.
Do me a favor, can you go back for a second, Cal?
Sure, you bet.
Yeah. So I just want to put this in proper context, is that this is not a script, although I do help people put their ideas together so they're able to share this. And also, if Kelly, if we were in a meeting and you asked me what I did, I wouldn't necessarily share all 4 components in one breath. Mm-hmm. Right? So in that 30-second or 1-minute slice of time, it's appropriate. It fits, right? The context is there. But as we're chit-chatting and meeting, let's say at a cocktail party, I might just share one aspect or a combination, but in a much more conversational way. So I might say, you know, I speak professionally about networking and referrals, and I also box. My company is Knockout Networking, and most of my work is in the financial services community. How about yourself? So you see what I did is I took components of that, I answered a question in a very short form, made it conversational, and turned it back to you. So that's what this could be and should be used for as a pivot point, to be able to have the right conversations with people and share the right information without overwhelming people as appropriate.
Great. I love it. All right. Now we'll talk about your networking processes.
All right. Good. All right. What are we waiting for? So this is my, so a lot of people think that networking is you just kind of,
oh, Michael, we lost you. Are you there? Technology. You there, Michael? I don't show that we've lost him, so let's give it just a second here and see if we get him back on. And Michael, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. Got to love technology. Okay, so I will, in case Michael pops back on, we'll save the Knockout Networking processes, and we're getting close to the end of the webinar as it is. Hopefully Michael will be able to come back on and talk about this photograph here, because he doesn't look like he's being punched in the mouth. But let's talk a little bit about Michael's book. He's referenced it today in our conversation. And if you order Michael's new book today, I know he had a special offer for our members.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Thank you. I'm so
Thanks
glad
I just booted off my internet, which is great.
Great. Let's go ahead and quickly we'll go back to the processes and we'll get to the point.
Sorry about that. That's my great internet system here. So so your preparation is your homework, what you do prior to going to an event. Face-to-face is when you're, asking people questions, getting into PEACE statements, right? That sort of thing. Follow-up is what your next steps are, typically within 24 hours or whatever you agree to do. And then maintenance, staying in touch. And OOS is OOSIOOM. Is that a sight? Is that a mind?
Oh, I wondered what it was.
Yeah, it's actually Usium. Yeah, Usium. So
Usium.
that aside is out of mind. It's staying in touch, and that's really where LinkedIn comes into play, and how you can get people on your calendar. Get people on your calendar is probably not a good way of putting it, but how you can establish, a calendar, way of every 2 weeks we meet, every month we, whenever I'm in town we meet. So there's some regularity in building the relationship. One of the best ways of doing that is inviting people that are important to your network to events that you are going to. So there's this team referral network that I'm part of. You should look into this and become part of this too. That's a great way of staying in touch and adding value to somebody's business and to the relationship.
I love that. I'm taking away the Usium. Okay, definitely. Okay, so he doesn't, as I was scrolling through this as you were offline, I was saying he doesn't look like he's getting punched in the mouth there.
No. Just missed the mouth. But Mike Tyson, my favorite fighter, and he is known for saying that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Yeah, and not the mouth there. And what he meant is, all the planning is great, but until you face the reality, often most plans fall short or they go away. And it's kind of the same thing here, is that, we both had an opportunity, Kelly, to discuss a lot of great information, I think. It just kind of scratched the surface. But, we got, when we spoke about mindset, like what we think about, how we think, skill set, right? Having the skills and the ability to do something, and then will set, putting it into practice. Most people have a problem and therefore won't put it into practice. And we end up punching ourselves in the mouth as a result. So don't do that. Think about one idea that was either a reminder or perhaps something that you learned that you could put into practice today. I
like that. And it was so funny. My notes had mindset, skill set, and will set in it. So excellent recap there. Let's talk a little bit about the excitement of your book. Share with us how our listeners can get the book. And then I know you have a special offer for them as well.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kelly. So many of these ideas are in the book that just came out. Knockout Networking for Financial Advisors and Other Sales Producers. And it came out about a week and a half early. I'm thrilled Wiley published it. So brandy new, and I'm thrilled about that. And if you are interested in spending time with me on the phone or on a Zoom for a 30-minute, I'm in your corner, I would happy to do that. You do that for free if you would purchase the book. You purchase the book, and I'm happy to spend some time and talk about your business and some best practices on where you might go, what you might say, with whom you might say it, how you might be able to focus on some of those things through a virtual medium, if that's important to you. Right? So if you're serious about your business, I would be happy to learn more about your business and be able to whisper, hopefully, some advice, insight, recommendations in your ear, within your corner.
And where do they go to buy it, Michael?
You can just go to Amazon, or you can just go to my site, knockoutnetworking.com. And it's right there on the homepage. You can just click on the link, or it's all over Amazon. Or when the Barnes and Nobles open up, when life happens again, it'll be there too.
Excellent. That is great. It's really been just awesome to have you on the Brown Bag Lunch and Learn webinar this month. This is my second time really hearing you speak, so to speak, and it's just fantastic information, and I love how it blends so well with our culture and what we do with Team Referral Network. And so for all of our listeners here today, I really encourage you to go out and get Michael's book, but more importantly, get that opportunity to spend 30 minutes with him. He has some real terrific information that can impact your business now. And I know we have one quick chat item here, so let me look before I cut you off, everybody.
Yeah, I see that the question is, how do we connect with me?
Yep, how do we buy the book? Okay.
Yeah, so all right. So the website, or you can simply go to michael@konetworking.com.
Excellent. All right, Michael, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Be well, be safe.
All right, be safe, everybody.
Bye-bye.